A man walks through Dubai International Airport, calm, unhurried, pulling a small carry-on behind him. He wears a business suit appropriate for January heat, checks his phone with practiced disinterest, moves through passport control with the ease of someone who has crossed borders hundreds of times without incident. Just another businessman arriving in a city built for anonymity and luxury. Except 4 people in the terminal are watching him, and 12 more are waiting at his hotel. Mahmoud al-Mabhouh clears customs at 3:15 p.m. on January 19, 2010. His passport identifies him as a Syrian textile merchant. His briefcase contains business documents and a Quran. His luggage holds 3 days of clothing and toiletries. Nothing suggests he is co-founder of Hamas's military wing, or that he has spent 2 decades smuggling weapons from Iranian factories to Gaza tunnels. Nothing about his appearance indicates that within 6 hours, he will be dead in a luxury hotel bathroom while the operatives who killed him vanish into the desert night. The taxi ride to Al Bustan Ratana takes 20 minutes through streets lined with construction cranes and glass towers. He watches Dubai's manufactured skyline scroll past his window. Behind him, 3 cars maintain careful distance. Ahead, 2 operatives already occupy the hotel lobby, reading newspapers they aren't actually reading. Al-Mabhouh notices none of this. He has traveled alone because his usual bodyguards couldn't secure tickets on his flight. This detail, this minor logistical inconvenience, has transformed him from protected target into accessible prey. He checks into room 230 using a credit card registered to a Damascus trading company. The desk clerk smiles professionally, hands him a key card, wishes him a pleasant stay. What neither of them knows is that this key card has already been duplicated. That room 230's door was opened 4 hours earlier by men in maintenance uniforms. That beneath the bed frame sits a device smaller than a cigarette pack, broadcasting encrypted pulses to receivers positioned across 3 floors. By the time Al-Mabhouh rides the elevator to the 2nd floor, 26 people are tracking his location with precision measured in meters. The machinery of assassination had been set in motion weeks earlier, and the most documented Mossad operation in history was unfolding beneath the gaze of cameras that would expose everything. This is not a story about whether assassination happened. Dubai's police chief would declare himself 99% certain of Israeli involvement within days. International scandal would erupt across 4 continents. Diplomatic relations would fracture over forged passports and violated sovereignty. The evidence was overwhelming. Captured frame by frame on hundreds of cameras, the operatives either didn't know about or dramatically underestimated. This is the story of how 26 professionals executed what should have been invisible and instead created the most comprehensively documented state-sanctioned killing ever recorded. It reveals something darker than any single death. That modern assassination has become bureaucratic art, refined through decades until murder resembles administrative procedure more than violence. That intelligence services can deploy small armies across international borders to eliminate specific individuals, while governments maintain plausible deniability. That sovereignty means nothing when powerful nations decide someone must die. And that even perfect operational execution cannot overcome the surveillance infrastructure of a city designed to watch everything. The invisible had become visible. The machinery of elimination had left a perfect trail. Understanding how Mahmoud al-Mabhouh died requires understanding who he was and why 26 operatives were deemed necessary to ensure he never left Dubai alive. Born in 1960 in Jabalia refugee camp, northern Gaza, Mahmoud al-Mabhouh grew up in neighborhoods where concrete walls absorbed decades of tension and violence. His father worked irregular construction jobs when Israeli permits allowed. His mother raised 7 children in 3 rooms. From childhood, he watched Israeli patrols enforce curfews and conduct raids that transform night into chaos. Every helicopter pass, every checkpoint confrontation, every arbitrary detention etched itself into memory like scars that never properly healed. Gaza, in the 1960s and 70s, was a laboratory of occupation and resistance. Israeli military control imposed systems of permits and restrictions that regulated movement, employment, and survival. The camp's narrow alleys bred both resignation and rage. Al-Mabhouh learned early that powerlessness required adaptation. You memorized patrol schedules. You avoided certain streets after dark. You became invisible when soldiers passed and only visible when it served specific purposes. These instincts would later define his operational methodology, the ability to move through hostile territories by mastering the art of strategic insignificance. School records describe him as disciplined and withdrawn, a student who spoke rarely but listened constantly. While other boys reacted emotionally to military incursions, Al-Mabhouh processed violence analytically. He excelled in mathematics and showed unusual patience for complex problems. Teachers noted his tendency to observe rather than participate, to calculate rather than react. By adolescence, he was already carrying messages for local resistance groups, folding coded notes beneath the soles of his shoes and walking them across neighborhoods while Israeli patrols watched without suspecting the quiet teenager moving with deliberate unremarkability. The First Intifada erupted in 1987 when Al-Mabhouh was 27. Gaza transformed into a battlefield of stones against armor, symbolic resistance against overwhelming force. He watched from rooftops as young men threw rocks at armored vehicles, gestures that usually ended in arrests or worse. But Al-Mabhouh recognized something others missed. Raw courage without strategy was just noise. Violence without precision accomplished nothing beyond temporary catharsis and permanent consequences. This realization shaped everything that followed, transforming him from another frustrated militant into something far more dangerous, a tactician who understood that patient calculation could accomplish what rage never could. What distinguished Al-Mabhouh from other Hamas operatives wasn't ideological fervor, but methodology. He wasn't driven by religious zealotry alone, but by cold operational logic. Associates described him as unnervingly calm under pressure, never impulsive, never loud. His anger remained buried beneath layers of control so complete it sometimes seemed inhuman. He kept detailed notebooks filled with coded entries, diagrams of routes, contact protocols, operational timelines. His obsession with security bordered on paranoia. He avoided crowds, trusted almost no one, and insisted on meeting protocols so rigid they frustrated even his closest allies. He rarely smiled, but when he did, it served specific purposes: to reassure, to deceive, to establish rapport that could be exploited later. A colleague later recalled him saying something that captured his entire worldview. The man who talks becomes a liability. The man who listens becomes an asset. That philosophy governed every interaction, every relationship, every operational decision. He cultivated invisibility the way other operatives cultivated networks, understanding that the most valuable intelligence tool was the ability to move unnoticed through hostile environments. By the late 1980s, Al-Mabhouh had become indispensable within Hamas's emerging military structure. He didn't rise through charisma or public speeches, but through demonstrated competence in operations others botched. When cells were compromised through sloppy communications, his remained secure. When weapons shipments were intercepted, his routes remained functional. By 1989, he had helped found what would become the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam Brigades, Hamas's military wing. His role wasn't public leadership, but infrastructure architecture, designing systems that could survive Israeli intelligence penetration. Israeli security forces first detained him in 1989 during a sweep targeting suspected Hamas militants. They held him for 8 months under administrative detention, interrogating him repeatedly about weapons caches and operational networks. Officers later described him as impenetrable, a prisoner who spoke minimally, never made eye contact, and repeated a single phrase in Arabic and Hebrew regardless of questioning tactics. "You already know what you think I've done." This performance became legendary within Hamas circles. When released, he wasn't just another former detainee. He was proof that discipline could defeat interrogation. His operational philosophy evolved through the 1990s as he recognized that traditional militant tactics had reached strategic limits. Suicide bombings and armed confrontations brought attention but not sustainable advantage. What Hamas needed was infrastructure, the invisible networks of finance, logistics, and communications that could sustain operations across years rather than weeks. Al-Mabhouh became the architect of these systems, designing decentralized structures where each cell knew only its immediate contacts, ensuring that compromising one segment wouldn't collapse the entire network. By 1998, he had relocated to Damascus, operating under Syrian government protection that hosted exiled Palestinian leaders as part of its regional strategy. From Damascus, al-Mabhouh coordinated what became known informally within intelligence circles as the Iranian Pipeline, a weapons smuggling network connecting Tehran's armament factories to Gaza's tunnel systems. His genius lay in compartmentalization. Suppliers in Iran never met transporters in Sudan. Financiers in Lebanon never communicated directly with tunnel operators in Sinai. Each segment functioned independently, connected only through encrypted messages and dead drops that left no traceable pattern. The network moved everything from small arms to advanced rockets. Iranian Revolutionary Guards would ship containers marked as agricultural equipment to Sudanese ports. Sudanese intermediaries would transport cargo to desert warehouses near the Egyptian border. Bedouin smugglers would move weapons through Sinai using routes that changed monthly. Finally, tunnel operators would bring material into Gaza under cover of darkness, distributing weapons through separate channels that al-Mabhouh controlled through coded ledgers and trusted lieutenants. European security services began detecting unusual patterns in the early 2000s. Cargo containers rerouted through multiple ports, charitable organizations funneling cash through discrete banks in Zurich and Vienna. Al-Mabhouh orchestrated these financial flows while maintaining the facade of a humanitarian coordinator helping Palestinian refugees. To diplomats at international conferences, he appeared as someone facilitating aid distribution. To intelligence analysts studying intercepted communications, he was the invisible hand-moving pieces on a chessboard that stretched from Tehran to Gaza City. Israeli intelligence agencies designated him a Category 1 facilitator, bureaucratic terminology that understated his influence while acknowledging his strategic value. By the mid-2000s, Mossad analysts had connected him to specific operations that demonstrated his evolution from logistics coordinator to operational director. In 2003, intercepted phone records linked him to coordination of a suicide bombing in Jerusalem that killed 23 people. The attack itself was executed by others, but the weapons, the funding, and the safe houses all traced through networks he had designed. In 2006, coded communications suggested his involvement in financing the kidnapping of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Though his name never appeared in official messages, financial ledgers revealed transactions matching the operation's logistics. For Israeli intelligence, this was confirmation that al-Mabhouh wasn't merely supporting terrorism, but directing specific operations. Between 2005 and 2008, Intelligence reports linked him to coordinated smuggling operations, transporting advanced weaponry from Libya and Sudan through Sinai tunnels. These weren't small arms, but anti-tank missiles, advanced rockets, and components for longer-range projectiles. Al-Mabhouh designed routes that exploited terrain and timing to evade Israeli aerial surveillance. Each operation demonstrated his engineering mindset, approaching problems with cold logic, where violence was simply another variable in complex equations. He once told a confidant something that revealed his philosophy. Dead bodies should communicate more effectively than speeches. Fear is precision, not emotion. This statement, intercepted and analyzed by multiple intelligence agencies, became part of his psychological profile. It demonstrated that he viewed violence instrumentally, not ideologically. Death was a tool for achieving specific strategic outcomes, deployed with the same calculation as financial transfers or communication protocols. His networks extended across multiple jurisdictions, exploiting gaps in international law enforcement coordination. Passports under names like Mahmoud Abdel Rauf al-Mabhouh, Mohammed Balawi, and Hamdi al-Qudra appeared in flight logs across Damascus, Beirut, and Istanbul. He changed not just documents, but entire presentations. His walk, his accent, even his behavioral patterns shifted depending on operational requirements. Survival had become performance art practiced daily. In March 2007, a warehouse explosion in Port Sudan destroyed a shipment of arms destined for Gaza. Local authorities called it an accident, but classified reports linked the incident to Israeli interception, guided by information from within al-Mabhouh's network. From that moment, he began purging his operations, quietly removing anyone whose loyalty seemed questionable. Trust became binary. You were either completely reliable or completely expendable. By 2009, Mahmoud al-Mabhouh had become one of the most wanted individuals in multiple intelligence databases. CIA analysts cataloged his travel patterns across at least 8 countries. MI6 tracked financial transactions through 17 different banks. Interpol maintained files documenting 12 confirmed aliases and 15 suspected ones. His movements traced through Athens, Vienna, Istanbul, and Budapest, always leaving minimal digital footprints. Yet for all his precautions, al-Mabhouh had patterns. He preferred specific airlines. He traveled on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He used hotels in specific price ranges that balanced anonymity with comfort. He booked flights online rather than through travel agents, leaving digital traces he believed were secure. These patterns, accumulated over months of surveillance, became the foundation for the operation that would kill him. Intelligence is often just patient observation of human habit repeated until it becomes predictable. In mid-2009, Mossad's internal directorate elevated him to the target list, a classified designation of individuals approved for neutralization abroad. The decision followed weeks of debate among political and security leaders who determined that eliminating him would sever critical logistical arteries sustaining Hamas's military capabilities. His death, they argued, would be both strategic necessity and operational message. The authorization came through encrypted transmission, known only by its operational code, plasma screen. What al-Mabhouh didn't know, as he continued his careful movements through Middle Eastern capitals, was that every flight he booked, every hotel he selected, every communication he initiated was being cataloged, analyzed, and incorporated into operational planning that would transform his next journey into his last. Israeli surveillance teams tracked him from Athens to Istanbul, Damascus to Beirut. Analysts in Tel Aviv studied his patterns with obsessive attention. They needed specific conditions, a location where assassination could be staged as natural death, where operatives could execute the mission and extract without leaving recoverable evidence, where diplomatic fallout could be managed through plausible deniability. The opportunity materialized when signals intelligence detected al-Mabhouh planning travel from Damascus to Dubai. Dubai offered nearly perfect operational conditions, neutral territory where neither Hamas nor Israel maintained official presence. A city built for international business where foreigners attracted no particular attention. Multiple entry and exit points through one of the world's busiest airports. Lax security protocols more focused on commerce than intelligence gathering. And most importantly, a hotel infrastructure where duplicating keycards and infiltrating rooms was achievable with proper technical resources and planning. The discovery that al-Mabhouh had booked his flight online represented a critical breach in his operational security. He had used a secure email account, but signals intelligence intercepted the confirmation. Flight details, arrival time, hotel booking at Al Bustan Ratana, room preferences. Everything needed to transform surveillance into action. The fact that his usual bodyguards couldn't secure seats on the same flight transformed an opportunity into necessity. He would be traveling alone for the first time in 18 months, vulnerable, accessible, ready. Mossad's Caesarea unit began operational planning immediately. Caesarea existed in the space between myth and bureaucratic reality. These operatives lived under assumed identities in apartments across Europe and the Middle East, their neighbors unaware that behind ordinary facades sat people trained to end lives with clinical precision. Their selection process filtered thousands of candidates through psychological evaluations designed to identify specific traits. Comfort with extended isolation. Ability to maintain cover identities under extreme stress. Capacity for moral compartmentalization that allowed execution of lethal missions without subsequent psychological trauma. Training lasted years beyond standard military service. Languages, surveillance techniques, escape protocols, hand-to-hand combat, weapons proficiency, document forgery, urban navigation. But the most critical skill was something harder to teach: the ability to be unremarkable, to move through airports and hotels without triggering any subconscious alarm in observers, to become so ordinary that memory couldn't hold you. This skill separated successful operatives from those who created exposure risks. The Dubai operation required 26 operatives, an unusually large team reflecting both the target's value and the operational complexity. Mission planners divided responsibilities across multiple specialized teams: 4 assassins who would execute the actual killing, 6 surveillance operatives who would track al-Mabhouh from airport to hotel, 8 support personnel who would handle communications, logistics, and contingency response, 4 entry specialists who would secure access to the hotel room, 4 extraction coordinators who would manage escape routes and ensure all operatives departed Dubai without detection. Cover identities were built from fragments of real lives, supported by meticulously forged documents that had required months to prepare. Passports from multiple countries: 12 British, 6 Irish, 4 French, 3 Australian, 1 German. Each document was perfect because Mossad's forgery division had access to genuine passport templates and equipment nearly identical to what legitimate governments used. The names belonged to real people. Identity theft conducted through sophisticated research into individuals whose travel patterns and personal profiles made them suitable masks. The operatives would enter Dubai separately over a 72-hour period, establishing cover as tourists and business travelers. They would stay in different hotels, use different transportation, maintain no visible connection to each other. Communications would occur through encrypted devices disguised as ordinary electronics, smartphones with modified SIM cards, Bluetooth earpieces that transmitted compressed data bursts, Even their clothing carried embedded RFID chips that allowed position tracking without requiring voice or text communication. The weapon selected for the operation reflected decades of research into untraceable poisons. Succinylcholine chloride, a neuromuscular blocking agent used in medical procedures to induce temporary paralysis. In controlled doses administered by anesthesiologists, it was safe and routine. In doses 10 times larger injected directly into muscle tissue, it caused complete respiratory paralysis within minutes. The victim would remain conscious briefly, experiencing the horror of suffocation while unable to move or call for help. Death would follow within 5 to 10 minutes. Succinylcholine offered specific operational advantages. It metabolized rapidly in the body, breaking down into compounds that occurred naturally in human biochemistry. Unless forensic pathologists specifically tested for it within hours of death, it left no definitive trace. An autopsy would show respiratory failure and cardiac arrest, findings consistent with natural causes in a middle-aged man with any underlying health conditions. The margin between perfect murder and detectable poisoning was timing. Get the body analyzed within 6 hours, succinylcholine might be detected. Wait 12 hours, and it had usually degraded beyond identification. The delivery method was equally sophisticated. A small injector pen disguised as a common insulin device, preloaded with the precise dose calculated based on Al-Mabhouh's estimated body weight. The operatives would inject him in a large muscle group, likely the thigh, where the puncture wound would be nearly invisible and easily attributed to anything from insect bite to minor abrasion. The entire injection would take less than 2 seconds, quick enough to complete before the victim could effectively resist. But injection required physical proximity and control, which meant the operatives needed to be inside Al-Mabhouh's hotel room when he returned, which required duplicating his key card, which required access to the hotel's electronic lock system. Every element of the operation depended on previous elements succeeding flawlessly. This was assassination as engineering problem, each component designed to enable the next until the accumulated precision became lethal. On January 16, 2010, the first operatives arrived in Dubai. They entered using their false identities, their luggage containing only tourist essentials and carefully concealed electronics. At customs, they smiled at officials and answered routine questions with practiced ease. What brings you to Dubai? Business, tourism, visiting friends. Responses calibrated to trigger no additional scrutiny. They collected rental cars, checked into hotels across the city, and began the patient work of establishing cover while waiting for the rest of the team to arrive. By January 18th, all 26 operatives were in position. They had rented apartments and hotel rooms across Dubai. They had purchased local SIM cards and activated communication protocols. They had conducted reconnaissance of Al Bustan Rotana, studying entrances, exits, security camera positions, staff shift changes. They knew which elevator banks had cameras and which had blind spots. They knew when housekeeping made rounds and when security conducted patrols. They had transformed a luxury hotel into a three-dimensional map of vulnerabilities. The entry specialist had acquired access to the hotel's electronic key system through a combination of social engineering and technical exploitation. One operative, posing as a systems technician from the hotel's security contractor, had been allowed into the office where keycard programming equipment was stored. He had installed a small device that transmitted copies of keycard data to a receiver hidden in a maintenance closet. When Al-Mabhouh checked in and received his room keycard, that data was captured and transmitted to the operatives within minutes. 2 men in maintenance uniforms entered room 230 4 hours before Al-Mabhouh's arrival. They installed the tracking device beneath the bed frame. They examined the bathroom layout, confirming that the space was suitable for the planned staging. They photographed the room from multiple angles, documenting exactly how furniture and personal items were arranged so they could be restored precisely after the operation. They left the room exactly as they found it, closing the door with a duplicate key card, leaving no evidence they had ever been there. The four-man assassination team established themselves in a room 2 floors above al-Mabhouh's. They wore tennis clothing, carried tennis rackets, projected the image of tourists enjoying Dubai's recreational facilities. They waited in their room, testing communications, reviewing the operational timeline, preparing mentally for the violence that would come. Each had participated in similar missions before. Each understood that the target was not a person, but a problem requiring solution. This psychological reframe was critical. Thinking of al-Mabhouh as a human being with family and history created emotional complications that could compromise execution. Thinking of him as operational objective maintained the clinical detachment necessary for assassination. By the evening of January 18th, all pieces were positioned. Surveillance teams confirmed al-Mabhouh's Damascus flight would depart on schedule. Communications were tested and verified secure. Extraction routes were confirmed available. Weather forecasts checked for any conditions that might affect operational timing. Medical supplies confirmed in case of unexpected complications. Contingency plans reviewed for scenarios ranging from al-Mabhouh, changing hotels, to Dubai police, conducting unrelated security operations that might compromise the mission. The operation entered its final phase. All that remained was for the target to arrive. At 3:15 p.m. on January 19, 2010, Mahmoud al-Mabhouh passes through Dubai Customs. A surveillance operative photographs him discreetly from 15 meters away. The image is transmitted instantly to command elements who confirm positive identification. He is wearing a dark business suit, carrying a black leather briefcase, pulling a small roller suitcase. His expression is neutral, slightly tired from the flight, showing no awareness that his every movement is being documented. 3 separate surveillance teams track him through the airport. One operative follows at distance, appearing absorbed in her phone. Another sits at a cafe, watching through the window while pretending to read a newspaper. A third monitors from the arrival hall, ready to follow if al-Mabhouh changes plans or meets someone unexpected. He does neither. He proceeds to the taxi stand, waits briefly in line, enters a white sedan. The taxi's license plate is photographed and transmitted. A fourth operative in a rental car pulls into traffic 4 vehicles behind. The drive to Al Bustan Ratana takes 22 minutes through afternoon traffic. Al-Mabhouh watches Dubai's skyline without particular interest. He doesn't notice the rental car that maintains consistent distance behind him. He doesn't see the motorcycle that follows for 3 blocks before turning away, its rider transmitting position updates through an encrypted frequency. He arrives at the hotel entrance at 3:42 p.m. Surveillance operatives are already positioned in the lobby, reading magazines, working on laptops, appearing to be ordinary business travelers killing time. Al-Mabhouh checks in using his Syrian passport and Damascus business credit card. The desk clerk processes his registration, makes small talk about weather and local attractions, provides a key card to room 230. The moment that card is encoded, the duplicate key card held by operatives 2 floors away becomes active. Al-Mabhouh thanks the clerk, declines bellhop assistance, walks toward the elevators, pulling his luggage behind him. He rides to the 2nd floor alone. The elevator has a camera in the upper corner. His image is recorded facing forward, looking tired, checking his phone. He exits on the 2nd floor, walks down a corridor that also has camera coverage, reaches room 230. He slides his keycard through the electronic lock. The green light flashes. He enters his room at 3:51 p.m. Inside, he unpacks methodically, places his briefcase on the desk, hangs his suit jacket in the closet, sets his toiletries in the bathroom, lies down on the bed for a brief rest. What he doesn't know is that beneath this bed sits a device transmitting his location, that in a room 2 floors above, 4 men are receiving those transmissions and preparing to move. That cameras throughout the hotel are recording every person who enters and exits, creating a documentary record that will later expose the entire operation in excruciating detail. At 4:30 p.m., Al-Mabhouh leaves his room. Surveillance operatives track him through the hotel lobby, out to the street, into a taxi. He travels to a restaurant in Dera, where he eats dinner alone, makes several phone calls, appears to conduct business through brief coded conversations. Operatives photograph him from a vehicle across the street. He finishes dinner. At 6:15 p.m., takes another taxi back to Al Bustan Rotana, returns to his room at 6:48 p.m. This is the window the operation requires. Al-Mabhouh in his room for the evening, unlikely to leave again. The assassination team receives confirmation and begins moving. They exit their room wearing tennis clothing, carrying their rackets, looking like tourists returning from recreation. They take the stairs to the second floor, avoiding elevators where cameras might capture their approach. They walk down the corridor toward room 230 with the casual confidence of people who belong here. At 7:03 p.m., they use their duplicate keycard to enter Al-Mabhouh's room. He is sitting at the desk, reviewing documents from his briefcase. He turns at the sound of the door opening, confusion crossing his face as 4 men enter swiftly. Before he can react, they are on him. One operative pins his arms. Another applies a chokehold that restricts blood flow without leaving visible marks. A third draws the injector pen and drives the needle into Al-Mabhouh's thigh, depressing the plunger, delivering the full dose of succinylcholine directly into muscle tissue. The struggle lasts less than 30 seconds. Al-Mabhouh tries to call out, but the chokehold prevents sound. He tries to resist, but the operatives are trained in restraint techniques, and he is outnumbered. The drug begins working within seconds. His muscles start relaxing involuntarily. His ability to coordinate movement deteriorates rapidly. They release him, and he slumps in the chair, unable to control his body, still partially conscious but paralyzed. They move him to the bed, laying him on his back. Within 3 minutes, his breathing becomes labored as the drug paralyzes his diaphragm. Within 5 minutes, respiratory failure is complete. Within 8 minutes, cardiac arrest follows. At 7:17 p.m., Mahmoud al-Mabhouh is dead, killed by suffocation induced by neuromuscular blocking agent, his final moments spent conscious but unable to move or cry out as his body systematically shut down. The operatives work quickly. They position his body to suggest natural death during sleep. They place a pillow over his face briefly to ensure complete suffocation and to create the appearance that smothering might have occurred, giving investigators an alternate theory that doesn't require looking for chemical agents. They restore the room to its original configuration, using the photographs taken earlier to ensure everything appears undisturbed. They collect any material they brought, leaving nothing that doesn't belong. At 7:28 p.m., they exit room 230 using the duplicate keycard, pulling the door closed behind them. They walk down the corridor with the same casual confidence they displayed entering. They take the stairs back to their floor. They return to their room, remove their tennis clothes, dress in business attire. They pack their bags methodically. At 8:45 p.m., they check out of their hotel using a different exit, load into a waiting taxi, depart for the airport. Meanwhile, Al-Mabhouh's body lies undiscovered in room 230. The tracking device beneath his bed continues transmitting, but no movement registers. In coordination rooms across Dubai, the remaining operatives begin executing extraction protocols. Those who played surveillance roles check out of their hotels at staggered intervals. Those who provided communication support wipe their devices. Those who handled logistics confirm that all equipment has been recovered or destroyed. By midnight on January 19th, 12 operatives have departed Dubai on flights to different destinations. By 6:00 a.m. on January 20th, another 10 have left. By noon, all 26 operatives have exited the country using their false identities, their passport stamps showing ordinary business travelers and tourists leaving after unremarkable visits. The operation appears complete, successful, untraceable. But Dubai's security infrastructure has recorded everything. Hundreds of cameras throughout the airport, hotels, and streets have captured the operatives' movements. Facial recognition systems have logged their entries and exits. Hotel keycard systems have recorded access patterns. Phone networks have tracked their communications. The most carefully planned assassination in Mossad's history has been comprehensively documented by technology the planners either didn't know about or dramatically underestimated. The body is discovered at 1:30 p.m. on January the 20th, when housekeeping enters room 230 after Al-Mabhouh fails to check out. The housekeeper finds him lying on the bed, apparently sleeping, fully clothed. When she speaks and receives no response, she approaches and realizes he is dead. She runs from the room screaming. Hotel security arrives within minutes. Dubai police are called immediately. The initial assessment suggests natural causes. No signs of struggle, no visible wounds, no evidence of forced entry. A middle-aged man found dead in bed. Heart attack, stroke, natural cardiac event. But when officers examine the room more carefully, inconsistencies emerge. His briefcase is closed but not locked. His phone shows recent calls, but is positioned unusually on the desk. Minor details that individually mean nothing, but collectively suggest the scene has been arranged. The body is transported to Dubai police forensic facilities for autopsy. The initial examination reveals no obvious trauma, no bullet wounds, no stab wounds, no blunt force injuries. But the pathologist notices something unusual: petechial hemorrhages in the eyes, small burst blood vessels consistent with suffocation, foam around the mouth and nose, lividity patterns suggesting the body was moved after death. These findings transform the investigation from routine to suspicious. When fingerprint analysis identifies the deceased as Mahmoud al-Mabhouh, Hamas operative wanted by multiple intelligence agencies, the case explodes beyond routine police work. Within hours, encrypted communications begin flowing between Dubai, Tel Aviv, Washington, and London. Intelligence services recognize the operational signature immediately: the clinical precision, the apparent natural death, the target's profile. This has Mossad written across every detail. Dubai Police Chief Dahi Khalfan Tamim personally takes control of the investigation. He orders comprehensive review of all security footage from Al Bustan Ratana and surrounding areas. What emerges over the following days is extraordinary. The cameras have captured not just the assassins, but the entire support network. Operatives entering the hotel in tennis clothing. Surveillance teams following al-Mabhouh from the airport. Communications personnel maintaining positions in the lobby. The technology meant to protect Dubai's visitors has instead documented a sophisticated assassination from beginning to end. Forensic analysis of the hotel's keycard system reveals that room 230 was accessed multiple times using duplicate credentials. Phone records show communications between numbers registered to the false identities. Flight records document that all suspects departed Dubai within hours of the murder, using tickets booked days in advance, demonstrating operational planning rather than spontaneous travel. The toxicology report takes longer, but eventually confirms traces of succinylcholine in tissue samples. By then, the compound has degraded significantly, but enough remains to indicate It was administered in massive doses incompatible with any medical procedure. The death is officially ruled homicide by suffocation facilitated by neuromuscular blocking agent. Professional execution, not random violence. Dubai police identified 26 suspects through painstaking analysis of security footage and travel records. They published photographs of the operatives captured on camera. The images spread across international media within hours. The faces are clear. The false identities are documented. The passport nationalities are revealed. 12 British passports, 6 Irish, 4 French, 3 Australian, 1 German. All with names belonging to real people, innocent civilians whose identities were stolen for operational cover. The international scandal erupts immediately. Britain summons Israel's ambassador to demand explanation for forged British passports used in assassination. Ireland does the same. France, Australia, and Germany lodge formal protests. The real passport holders, ordinary citizens who had nothing to do with the operation, find their names and faces spread across global media, their identities compromised, their safety potentially endangered. Israel maintains strategic silence. The Foreign Ministry issues a brief statement expressing no knowledge of the incident and declining further comment. Behind closed doors, intelligence relationships strain under the weight of plausible deniability that everyone understands, but no one can prove. Western intelligence services privately acknowledge the operation's precision even as their governments condemn it publicly. The contradiction reveals the fundamental hypocrisy of international relations. Assassination is acceptable when done by us, unacceptable when exposed. Hamas declares al-Mabhouh a martyr, organizing large funeral ceremonies in Gaza despite having no body to bury. Thousands attend, waving flags and chanting vows of vengeance. Hamas leadership condemns Israel and promises retaliation. The rhetoric is familiar, the cycle predictable. Death begets promise of more death. The machinery of violence grinding forward on both sides without resolution or reflection. Britain takes the strongest action, expelling an Israeli diplomat in response to the passport forgery scandal. Ireland and Australia issue formal warnings. France conducts an investigation that produces no actionable results. The diplomatic crisis burns intensely for weeks before gradually fading from headlines, replaced by newer outrages and fresher scandals. International memory is short when political convenience demands forgetting. Dubai Police Chief Tamim becomes an unlikely media figure, giving interviews where he declares 99% certainty of Israeli involvement while acknowledging lack of definitive proof. He releases surveillance footage to international media, an unprecedented decision that exposes operational methodologies usually protected by classification. The footage shows operatives in wigs and disguises, changing clothes in hotel bathrooms, coordinating movements through precise timing. It is both shocking and mundane, revealing that assassination looks less like Hollywood and more like extremely careful teamwork. The case revealed something uncomfortable that governments prefer not acknowledging. Modern intelligence services can conduct sophisticated assassinations almost anywhere when properly motivated, and no amount of sovereignty or law truly protects targets marked for elimination by states possessing the resources and determination to reach across borders. Dubai's cameras documented the operation, but didn't prevent it. Identification of operatives produced international scandal, but no prosecutions. The machinery of state violence operated openly, and the most significant consequence was diplomatic embarrassment, not accountability. The bureaucratic machinery that authorized al-Mabhouh's death operated far from the hotel where he died. In fluorescent-lit offices within Mossad headquarters, Analysts had spent months building the case for his elimination. Every operation passed through layers of authorization, each stamped with a cold precision of factory blueprints. Lawyers reviewed international law implications. Political liaisons assessed diplomatic risks. Medical experts evaluated toxin options. The language used was deliberately administrative, designed to sound like business rather than murder. Operations weren't called assassinations, but resolutions. Targets weren't. Targets, people, but problems requiring solutions. This linguistic sanitization allowed those involved to maintain psychological distance from the ultimate reality of what they authorized. The hand that signed the death order never saw the face that died. And in that distance lay the perfection of modern statecraft, the ability to kill without ever touching blood, to eliminate threats through paperwork that transformed moral decisions into bureaucratic processes. The operatives who executed the mission belonged to Mossad's Caesarea unit, an organization that exists in the space between myth and reality. These specialists live under assumed identities in apartments across Europe and the Middle East. Their neighbors unaware that behind thin walls sit people trained to end lives precisely and quietly. Their weapons are routine and patience. They blend into airports, cafes, and train stations through years of practice at becoming invisible. They speak many languages, hold many passports, but belong nowhere. The Dubai operation belonged to a lineage stretching back decades. In 1973, Operation Wrath of God sent teams across Europe hunting Black September operatives. Men were shot in doorways, poisoned in hotel rooms, tracked through fogged train windows. The Lillehammer mistake, where an innocent man died due to mistaken identity, taught Mossad to evolve, to never again leave traces of doubt. Each subsequent operation refined the methodology, learning from both successes and failures. Dubai was an echo of these operations, born from decades of learned invisibility. For Palestinians, al-Mabhouh's death sparked immediate mourning mixed with defiance. In Gaza's crowded alleys, his photograph appeared framed in black cloth. Thousands gathered for symbolic funeral ceremonies, chanting his name and vowing continued resistance. Speakers hailed him as a martyr of precision, someone who fought with intellect rather than guns. The sound of grief mixed with promises of vengeance, the familiar rhythm of a conflict where each death feeds the cycle rather than ending it. In Tel Aviv, the event passed without public ceremony. Inside intelligence offices, analysts archived the mission file with clinical detachment. For them, emotion held no place in operational assessment. The objective had been achieved. Hamas networks in Europe would be disrupted, at least temporarily. Yet even within Mossad, some felt the weight of what had been done. Each victory carried echoes of inevitability. One more name erased, one more file closed, one more cycle of violence deferred rather than ended. Hamas reorganized its European channels, learning from al-Mabhouh's precision and his downfall. Young operatives studied his methods while noting the mistakes that led to his exposure. His legend became both instruction and warning. Be invisible, but never believe you're untouchable. Israel strengthened its reputation for global reach, sending the message that no protection was absolute and no location truly safe. The truth that emerged from the Dubai operation was darker than any single death. It revealed a world built upon invisible decisions where justice is measured in secrecy and morality dissolves in classified ink. Nations kill quietly. Truth survives only as rumor, and the machinery of state power grinds forward without pause or accountability. Al-Mabhouh became another name on a list that never ends. His file closed and erased, while somewhere in the bureaucratic depths of intelligence headquarters, another name was already being prepared for similar fate. Today, The Al Bustan Rotana continues operating as a luxury hotel in Dubai. Guests check into room 230 unaware of what happened there. Travelers walk the same corridors where surveillance teams tracked a target toward death. The hotel's cameras still record everything, but no plaques mark where Mahmoud al-Mabhouh died. No memorial acknowledges the elaborate assassination conducted within these walls. Life continues with the aggressive normalcy that characterizes places where extraordinary violence occurred but left no visible scars. Nothing marks the location because that's how perfection looks. Ordinary, unremarkable, leaving no trace that anything extraordinary ever occurred. What does Mahmoud al-Mabhouh's death reveal about the world we live in? That certain people can be eliminated anywhere, anytime, by states that possess the will and resources to reach across borders. That sovereignty means nothing when powerful nations decide someone must die. That truth becomes whatever remains after evidence vanishes. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this investigation into invisible warfare made you see international relations differently, hit that like button and share this video. Subscribe because we're exposing the operations that governments deny and the machinery of power that operates in perpetual shadow. Hit the notification bell. The next buried operation is already unfolding somewhere, waiting to be revealed.